Take a deep breath, exhale, and join us for this episode of Hope Out of the Darkness.
Shelley Pavlis is a non-professional learning to navigate the world of suicide prevention. As a volunteer of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention in Orange County, California, she chats with people who, like her, are affected by suicide. Hear their real-life stories, learn how they keep living life to the fullest, and find out what can be done to stop suicide. Join the conversation with fellow AFSP volunteers and mental health professionals, all of whom have their own stories about suicide. Let's find hope out of the darkness.
Today I want to talk about being a loss survivor, a suicide loss survivor. That means that I had someone close to me die by suicide. And like many of you, I have been deeply affected by suicide. I'm Shelley Pavlis, creator and host of this podcast, and I wanted to hop on today to do a special episode to share my story a little bit and also share some of the information that was the first information that I was looking for when I started to do research on suicide prevention and when I started to volunteer with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention here in Orange County, of which now I am a board member. So I feel that information might help someone else, and so I wanted to do, as I said, a short little intro to some of that basic information which comes directly from several of the top mental health resources and also from the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Let me tell you, first of all, a little bit about my story and what the catalyst was that got me into walking in the door to volunteer for AFSP OC. So I have had family members in my life, couple close family members and some not so close, who have mental health issues and have attempted suicide a couple times. And I had actually just found out about a year ago that I had an aunt who died by suicide. I did not know this, and a family member shared that with me after they found out that I was doing the volunteer work with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. So even my family has been directly affected by this stigma and not wanting to talk about mental health issues and not wanting to talk about suicide. So that, in part, was one of the reasons why I wanted to be the voice and help stop the stigma, because I experienced it in my own life. Also, of course, with my family members that died by suicide, it got me curious as to thinking back with my experiences with them and possibly how I could have helped. But the real catalyst was when, so let me do a little bit of backstory. One of our sons had been physically injured, and we did not know that. And he was experiencing headaches 24/7. He was in extreme constant pain all the time. This occurred while he was in his early years in high school, and we ended up homeschooling him. And I was with him all the time. The first year, when we were trying to figure out what the heck was going on and try to find a solution and relief for his headaches, I took him to all kinds of doctors and the chiropractor. Anyway, we were out constantly, and we got obviously quite close. And so one night he pulled me into his room and he shared that he didn't think he could do it anymore. He didn't think he could go on. He did not use the word suicide. He did not say, I think I'm going to kill myself. But he expressed to me essentially that without using those specific words. Because we were able to have that conversation and he shared that information with me. Sorry. I was able to get him help. One of the worst things a parent knows is when their child is suffering and you cannot take the pain away, or you don't know what to do to help. It is absolutely devastating. So I felt fortunate that he had shared this with me so that we could get him help, and so that I knew exactly where his headspace was. Not too much time had passed from that time when he shared that, when he was starting to participate in some of his other activities. We had actually figured out what his issue was, and so he's being treated for that. And he was a Boy Scout, and he was working towards his Eagle, and he actually completed his Eagle. Just before he did that, one of the boys who was in his troop, 17 years old, I also was a committee member for that troop. So I was a parent leader. Well, in Boy Scout terms, in layman's terms, I was a parent leader. In Boy Scout terms, it's a little bit different, and my terminology isn't going to be absolutely correct for anybody who knows Boy Scouts. But to keep it simple, I knew all of the scouts and the families quite well as well. And his friend, 17-year-old friend, died by suicide. And the next day, when I went over to his parents' house, who I sure felt inadequate. I wondered if there was something that I could do to help them in the moment, but I struggled for how to start the conversation. I didn't know how to talk to them. I also wondered if there was something I could have done to help their son. I wanted to know what the warning signs were. If there was something that I missed. I had seen him just a week before, and we had interacted, and I didn't notice anything at the time. I didn't, in hindsight, notice anything, to be fair, but I didn't know what I didn't know. So that's what, several years later, after my mind had been processing and going through all of this, and I really wanted to put my efforts into a cause that was super meaningful to me. It made perfect sense for me to walk into the door at AFSP OC and find out more information and find out what I could do to help and find out what I could do to reduce the number of people who die by suicide. We want to take a quick break and recognize that today's podcast episode may not be appropriate for everyone. If you are in crisis or know someone who is, please call the Suicide Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255 or text the word HELP to 741-741. And of course, if you feel you or someone you're with are in danger or experiencing a medical emergency, call 911. One of the things I want to talk about today is the warning signs. There's a special program that AFSP gives. It's called Talk Saves Lives. The warning signs of suicide are a big part of Talk Saves Lives. I learned to be a presenter for the Talk Saves Lives programs. There are several versions of it depending on what you do in your life or what is more appropriate for you. You can actually sign up on AFSP's website. Right now, they're still virtual, but we should be going back to some in-person Talk Saves Lives as well. Anyone can contact AFSP OC locally for us, or if, no matter where you are in the country, You can contact AFSP National, or you can contact your local chapter of AFSP. And if you're, for instance, an employer or a group like a church group or a social group or gathering, and you feel that it would be helpful for AFSP to present this Talk Saves Lives to your group, we will schedule it. The more we can give this program and present it to people, the more people will understand a lot of the basics, the fundamentals, also a lot of the research behind the fundamentals, which goes to the core of there is not any one thing that causes suicide. There are a lot of factors. I won't go into the details of that. That's in the Talk Saves Lives as well. But there are warning signs, and there are possibly things that you can do to prevent suicide. Suicide is preventable. If we can get that word out and get people the information, we can save lives. So straight from AFSP's documentation, I'm going to go through a little bit really quickly here, the suicide warning signs. If you're interested, you can find this information. I'm going to drop all of this info, all of these resources in the show notes so that you can have quick access and you can read up on what I'm talking about if you're interested. The suicide warning signs are categorized right now into 3 groups. Talk, so what someone who has suicidal ideations or is thinking about suicide, how they might talk, things they might say, their behavior, how they act, and their mood. Talk. So someone who is experiencing suicidal ideations, possibly thinking about killing themselves, will talk using these terms or in this way. That they're experiencing unbearable pain, being a burden to others, killing themselves, which is obvious, feeling trapped, or they could be talking about having no reason to live. The behavioral signs, the keys to the behavioral signs, are increased use of alcohol or drugs. Yeah, I'm referring to my notes because I want to make sure I don't miss any, and they're all extremely important. Withdrawing from activities. The individual could possibly be giving away their prized possessions or isolating themselves from friends and family, looking for means, looking for a way to kill themselves, such as searching online for materials or means or descriptions of ways. They could be acting recklessly, could be sleeping too much or too little. They actually could be visiting or calling people to say goodbye. Sometimes they could be aggressive. There can be aggression, is how it's worded with AFSP. And then lastly, their mood. You could see possibly signs of depression, irritability. They might lose interest in things that normally they would be interested in. There could be anxiety, rage, or humiliation. Now, Talk Saves Lives goes a little bit more into detail in all of these, and but these are the key suicide warning signs. And I have heard several people actually say, who suffered very close family members' loss by suicide, they have said that they did not recognize the warning signs at the time. And in hindsight, they did. So that's why it's really important to get this information out so that everyone knows what to look for if they potentially find themselves in a situation where they're with someone who they feel could be having suicidal ideations or could be struggling, or they are with a family member or no family member who could be struggling. One of the things to remember is it's okay to directly ask someone, are you thinking of killing yourself? And if you do not know what to do, and the answer is yes, you call the suicide hotline with that person, or if that person, have a talk about it. Ask the person if they would be okay if you called the suicide hotline with them, or sitting next to them if you called. It's okay to ask. In fact, it's critical to ask if you suspect that that could be the case. We need to be the voice. We need to talk about this. We need to share this information. So again, if you are interested or you're with a group that might be interested, depending on who would be organizing presentations for your group or for your work, you can go online and you can contact, as I said, your local chapter for AFSP or AFSP themselves, or if you're Orange County, you can call me if you want or contact me, and we'll schedule a Talk Saves Lives for you. The other thing that I want to quickly mention is for Orange County, I am the ambassador for Project 2025. Project 2025 is the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention's program to reduce the number of suicides in this nation by 20% by the year 2025. There was a lot of research done prior to initiating this program, and the 4 key areas that were targeted where the most immediate results were presumed to be is where we could make the most impact as quickly as possible. Let's put it that way. Are firearms, the emergency department, medical care providers, and corrections. So if you're in any of those areas too, we are going to reach out to you because we want to give you that Talk Saves Lives presentation. We also want to help you with program resources, whatever you need for suicide prevention for each of those special areas, and several upcoming shows on this podcast. I will be actually talking to people in those different areas. We'll be talking about programs, how things are set up now in those particular fields, what the new laws are and the new changes as far as information and how to process people who are involved in those areas who may have mental illnesses or may have tried to kill themselves or may have suicidal ideations. So several upcoming episodes are going to address some really, really interesting information about all that. And then as my role for Project 2025 unfolds too, I may even do an entire episode about that with some guests, because it is in my opinion, one of the core aspects of AFSP, and one of the things that we can do and need to do is reduce the number of suicides, in addition to the research and the education for everyone, which also helps with all that. So let me just check my notes real quick here and see. I just wanted to make sure that I didn't miss any of my key points. But first and foremost, I basically just want everybody to know that I want this podcast to be about helping people. And I know there are a lot of you out there who, like me, have been affected by suicide, or like a lot of my guests have been affected by suicide. And I know that By all of us, again, discussing and sharing information and resources, we can make an impact, and we can reduce the number of suicides in our community and in this nation. Thanks for listening today. If you are in crisis or know someone who is, please call or text the Suicide Lifeline. You can find out how to reach the Lifeline by looking for the numbers in the show notes of every single episode. If it wasn't glaringly evident in today's episode, I'm not a mental health or suicide prevention professional, and this is not an official AFSP podcast. I am determined, however, to find a way to help stop suicide in my community and to support those affected by suicide.
Thanks for listening to Hope Out of the Darkness. To learn more about Shell, the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention, and how to submit listener questions to be answered on the show, visit hopeoutofthedarkness.com.